Hey, what's up, everyone? As some of you know from some of my past videos, I am a coin collector. I do coin roll hunting and all that good stuff. But rather than have you watch me open rolls, sometimes I've just kind of gone over the results of what I've gotten. I'm doing that today because I've noticed lately that there really isn't much to be found, especially for pennies. When I started doing this about 6 or 7 years ago, I used to be able to pretty much get about maybe 31 or 32% of my pennies copper. So, and I'd be able to pull out copper pennies, which were made until the middle of 1982 and previous. So basically, every 81 and older penny is made of primarily of copper, and some 82. So what I do is, to make it easy on myself, just everything 81 and older I pull out. Well, tonight I went through 10 rolls of pennies, 500 pennies, and I came up with exactly 100 copper pennies. It's only 20%. I've noticed that number is going down quite a bit, further and further and further. Uh, and I think that probably in a few years, it's going to be like maybe 8 or 9%, and then maybe 5%. Another thing worth noting is that 10 rolls of pennies, I did not even find one wheat cent. Normally, I might find like one or two in 10 rolls. And I get, again, it's only 10 rolls, so, that doesn't really, it's not that great of representation, but I think it's worth noting. Some of you might know the price of copper right now is around 4.45 a pound, which is resulting in pennies being worth, U.S. pennies, being worth about 2.9 cents a piece just on scrap value. Of course, some are worth more. And some Canadian pennies, if you find them, being worth around 3.2%, depending on the year and composition of the coin. So it's a pretty good, inexpensive way to metal hunt. I don't bother really with going through half dollars, dimes, quarters. It's just not worth it to me. You can go through boxes and not get one thing. It's not worth me putting the cash out and then all the time and really not getting much of anything. I do enjoy nickel roll hunting though sometimes because I was able to pull out a lot of, believe it or not, like 38 to like 1960 nickels, and then occasionally I'd pull out a 2009. Even that's really dried up a lot. I noticed that I get almost nothing previous to 1970s, almost, and even, I mean, occasionally a 64 because they made billions of them, but besides that, almost nothing prior to the early 70s. Um, and the 2009s, I can't remember the last time I pulled a 2009 out of circulation. So I just kind of want to share this. For those of you familiar with Gresham's law, good money drives out bad money. If you think about it, our new pennies are made out of zinc, and the scrap value on them is below 1 cent. So they're basically assigning a value greater to the intrinsic value of that money. The copper, which is something they don't like, is actually worth three times what they claim it to be because it actually has some intrinsic value. Of course, government doesn't like that because it costs more to make, believe it or not, it costs more to make the zinc pennies than they're worth. So if they were still copper, that's worth even more. So, like I said, Gresham's law: good money drives out bad money. Think about what happened, in the mid '60s after silver was pulled out after the '64 year. People were basically keeping all their '64 and older half dollars and dimes and quarters because they actually had some intrinsic value. It wasn't a promise stamped on a metal disc; it had value. Right now, nickels are worth about 6.5 cents scrap value, and like I said, the copper pennies are worth 3 cents, almost 3 cents a piece. So they're getting kind of driven out of the system, and more people are pulling them aside. And I think that's going to continue even more, especially if you start seeing copper maybe hit like $5 or a little over $5. With all the labor issues going around in the world, I could see how maybe it's not being mined as frequently as it was. So that could lead to some upward pressure. And the other thing is just flat out inflation. I mean, we're looking at about 6% inflation this year alone. So if in the next year copper, goes up just 6%, like the general rate of inflation, you're talking about another 27 cents. That would put it up to about 472. Another year of 6% puts it over 5. So it's really not out of the realm of possibility that in a year or two you might see copper, $5 or so an ounce, excuse me, a pound. Um, then these pennies all of a sudden become worth maybe 4 cents or 5 cents scrap value. Now, you get some people say, well, you can't melt the pennies because it's illegal, which is absolutely correct. It is illegal to melt them. But at some point, I think it becomes almost like a really cheap store of value. And I think it becomes something that people might want to keep aside, just like wheat pennies. Well, you can't melt a wheat penny either, but if you go on eBay, a lot of times you see people spending 6 or 7 cents, 8 cents a piece on wheat pennies. Kind of crazy because, I mean, let's think of a common late 50s wheat penny that there was hundreds and hundreds of millions made. People will spend like 7 or 8 cents just to get like a bag of them or a roll of them. It's kind of crazy. And if you haven't looked at some of the eBay prices to see what some of them have been selling for, check out people who are selling boxes of 500 wheat pennies or 1,000 wheat pennies or sometimes just a roll or two. Those are the ones that are really something because you'll see people spending like sometimes like $5 for a roll of wheat pennies. Uh, so I can see something similar happening to these copper pre 82 pennies, where eventually they might be worth 5 or 6 cents a piece, and guess what? You got them for a penny. Now it's not going to make you rich, but you know what? It is an asset for a rainy day, and you know if you go through your pocket change and you find 3 or 4, it's really not going to affect you to throw them in a bucket and just save them. It's an interesting thing, and if for no other reason, if you have children or grandchildren, you throw them to them. It'll really be cool in a few years. So I just wanted to share that with you, how in just a few years we've gone from me finding like 31, 32% copper to 20%. And I would think that if I do this in about a year,